Hello, you spooktacular people. Welcome to this special bonus episode of the History Goes Bump podcast. I am your host, Diane. The month of April in 2025 is proving to be one full of travel. We're going back to surprise Kelly's dad for his 90th birthday, so we're going to be in California for almost a week. We come back for a week, and then I'm off to go see my niece graduate from the police academy. So trying to get out regular content is a little tough. So we decided to put up a bonus episode. This is 2 bonus casts that we had done back in 2021 about haunted, deadly waters. Part 1 and 2, we decided to combine them both together and to present them to you, the entire audience, here. And this gives you a little taste of what you get when you start supporting the show and becoming an executive producer. History Goes Bump bonus cast. Water can be dangerous for anyone, even the best swimmers in the world. Water has a cunning to it, and when you add currents and rocks and other things, a mild brook can turn into a raging river. An ocean that regularly meets the beachline and recedes can become a tsunami that wipes out a city. Or it can become a great flood that wipes out nearly all of humanity, as so many myths have recounted. Water and spirits go hand in hand. We've heard that ghosts can't cross water, but also that spirits can use water for energy, since they are mainly electrical. There are many bodies of water, both large and small, throughout the world that have ghost stories connected to them. Join us as we share these haunted, deadly waters. Our first location is Bride's Pool in Hong Kong. This is a stream pool with several waterfalls in northeastern New Territories, Hong Kong near Tai Mai Tuck, in Plover Cove Country Park. There's also a pool that's located nearby called Mere Pool. The road immediately above has been nicknamed the Deadly Curve by locals because there's been so many fatal car accidents that have taken place on that road. Now, I don't know if it has anything to do with this pool being haunted, but the gorgeous Bride's Pool in Hong Kong is rampant with hauntings, and people who live nearby tend to steer clear of it. There have been a number of peculiar incidents over the years that have not only baffled residents, but also attracted some media attention. In September of 2011, cremated remains were found scattered in and around Bride's Pool. There were also abandoned Chinese spirit tablets that were strewn underneath the trees. There are a couple of legends connected to Bride's Pool. The first explains how it got its name. Legend has it that a bride was being carried in a sedan by 4 porters on her way to meet her groom in stormy weather. They went by the pool and one of the porters slipped, and unfortunately the bride fell into the pool, and not knowing how to swim, she drowned. That's why the pool's been named Bride's Pool in memory of that bride. She could be haunting the pool, but there seems to be multiple spirits here, which is explained by another legend. According to this legend, a horde of pirates killed an entire village nearby and dumped the bodies in the pool. And there are locals who believe that water spirits are known to stand in wait to possess the soul of any child who isn't paying attention and may fall into the pool's depths. Now we're going to go from the Bride's Pool to the Devil's Pool. This is in Babinda, Queensland, Australia. And the Devil's Pool certainly lives up to its name. This is a natural pool in a treacherous stretch of Babinda Creek. There are large granite boulders that are all along the creek bed and actually fill the creek bed. It's one of the main attractions of the Babinda Boulders Scenic Reserve. In 2005, the Australian TV program Message Stick gave an account of the pool through many interviews and testimonies of witnesses because they wanted to investigate a really strange thing that seems to happen here at Devil's Pool. Through the decades, many young male travelers have met their death here in the pool. The pool has taken approximately 18 lives since 1959. The local council decided they needed to do something about this, so they put up signs, they tell visitors to stay within designated swimming areas to be safe, and really they want people to just avoid the place. Aboriginal lore claims that Devil's Pool is haunted by a woman named Ulana. Ulana was a young woman from the Indingi tribe. She was promised to a respected tribal elder, but she wasn't interested in him. She wasn't digging the whole arranged marriage thing. And as a matter of fact, she actually fell in love with a handsome young warrior, and his name was Daiga. He was from another tribe, and, well, he fell in love with her too. They fled their tribes and ran out into the wilderness so that they could be together. When the tribal elders found that Ulana had left, they sent out a search party, and they managed to capture the young lovers. Daiga was dragged away, but Ulana escaped, and she was in deep despair. She threw herself into the Devil's Pool because she just didn't want to marry this other man, and if she couldn't be with Daiga, she didn't want to be with anybody else. Her anguished cries turned into the pool's torrents, according to this legend. Visitors here have witnessed a mysterious woman roaming around in the pond, and the cries of Ulana are said to still be heard, and some visitors have captured photographs of a face under the surface of the water. Many young men have fallen to their death, and people say the reason why so many young men have died here is because the spirit of Ulana has captured them and pulled them into the depths. Next we have White Rock Lake, and this is in Texas. White Rock Lake is a reservoir. It's located in northeast Dallas, Texas, and it was formed by damming the White Rock Creek, and that's why it's called White Rock Lake. It covers over 1,200 acres, and the water here is used for the Dallas community for their drinking water. This had once been a collection of farms that were owned by the Daniel and Cox families, and it's believed the families lived here in the late 1830s, early 1840s. The Daniels family were the original ones here. Their son went off to the Civil War, and he made a friend with a young man whose last name was Cox. After the war was over, both of these young men had survived, and the Cox family moved to land that was adjacent to the Daniel family. So they had these joint farms, and as the family members died, they also had a family cemetery that they called the Daniel Cox Cemetery. There are other families who are buried here as well that were pioneer families: the Humbards, the Glovers, Lavenders, McComases, and the Donnays. Construction on White Rock Lake began in 1910 because there was a water shortage in Dallas, so they knew they needed to set up some kind of residential reservoir here. The lake was completed in 1911, and residential construction soon grew up around the lake. A Civilian Conservation Corps, a CCC, which came about during the Great Depression, it was part of the New Deal, started developing municipal parks around the lake as well. There also was a camp here for the Civilian Conservation Corps at Winfrey Point, and there was about 8 barracks there. When World War II broke out, the U.S. Army used the CCC camp as an induction point for new recruits. And the barracks at Winfrey Point was used to house 403 German prisoners of war. This was still a place where people could go swimming until 1952. There was a drought, there was so much demand for water that the beaches of White Rock no longer were allowed to have swimmers in order to maintain a sanitary water supply. The White Rock Lake Park opened up in 1992 and is a center of recreational activity for Central Dallas. There's picnic areas, bicycling, jogging, all that good stuff. And the Daniel Cox Family Cemetery is still there as well. Now, there's a well-known urban legend connected to this lake, and it's the story of the Lady of White Rock Lake, or the Lady in White. It is reported to be haunted by the ghost of a woman who looks to be about 20 years old. She's wearing a water-soaked 1930s evening dress when people see her. She usually appears at night, and it's usually along the roadside of East Lothar Drive. And just like all of our other hitchhiking ghosts, witnesses will see her along the road. They'll stop to pick her up. She will ask to be taken to her home on Gaston Avenue in Dallas. And then as the driver is taking her home, she will suddenly disappear, leaving the driver all alone. But the car seat is waterlogged. She is supposedly a drowning victim from a boating accident that happened in the 1930s. Ghostly encounters have been published in Dallas area newspapers starting in the 1960s, so she has been cited for many decades. And this legend is said to have been the inspiration for the bluegrass song Bringing Mary Home. This was written by John Duffy of the Country Gentlemen. That song actually made the Billboard Country Chart in 1965, and it's been recorded by many others from Frankie Miller to Red Soven, Daniel O'Donnell, and Ricky Skaggs. And it is regarded as a bluegrass standard. The legend also was the inspiration for Lakewood Brewing Company's second legendary series release, La Dame du Lac, a French farmhouse-style bière de garde. Now I got to go over to Wyoming and to Yellowstone, to the Lower Yellowstone Falls. In 1870, there was a group of Native Americans who stole some pack horses from a group of 5 militiamen. This was during the night in the area of Lower Yellowstone Falls. As this Native American group were taking the horses, the men woke up and they went after the Native Americans. They managed to catch up to them just as they were attempting to cross the treacherous falls. During the fight, the Native Americans had this raft that they'd kind of built. It was makeshift, and they were swept over the falls and drowned. There are people who stand on the platform at the falls, and they swear that they hear the death chant of some Native American warriors in the distance. And every so often, the river water is said to turn to red. Next, we have Cottonwood Canyon in Utah. This is a canyon in the Wasatch Range, about 12 miles southeast of Salt Lake City. This is a watershed canyon that supplies drinking water to the Wasatch Front. The canyon is about 15 miles long, and it offers all kinds of great stuff from picnicking to biking, hiking, rock climbing, fishing, camping. And there are actually 2 ski resorts here, Brighton and Solitude. Cottonwood Canyon not only has water here, but it's a scenic byway, and it runs the length to Guardsman Pass at the top of the canyon. And when there's a spring runoff, Big Cottonwood Creek runs very fast and wild, so it can be very treacherous. And the creek has been deadly when the water is high. Many people have drowned here over the years. And a river runs through the campgrounds, and it's known to swell up and take the lives of campers and swimmers as well. There's all kinds of reports of hauntings here. Drivers report seeing several strange ghouls in the canyon. People claim to see a young woman dripping wet and distressed along the side of the road, waiting for a ride. They pull over, try to assist her, and then she'll disappear. So this one doesn't get in the car and has to be taken somewhere. She just disappears once you pull over to pick her up. There's a lone male hitchhiker also near the mouth of the canyon. When you pull up to let him in, he also vanishes. So we have some vanishing hitchhiking ghosts here. Some people report hearing the clinking sound of the carbiners on his belt as he walks away, though they can no longer see him. Another male hitchhiker walks along the road with a dog. He and his dog may climb into the car, but when you look into the rearview mirror to ask them where they would like to be taken, all of a sudden they're both gone. There's also a trick to seeing ghosts here, apparently. The best time to see spirits is in May. I don't know why. Maybe they like the spring. But if you close your eyes, count to 3, and then summon the ghost to come, when you open your eyes, you're going to get to see them. And finally, we have Manchac Swamp in Louisiana. Manchac Swamp Bridge is a twin concrete trestle bridge that's found in Louisiana. It's about 22.8 miles in length, and it's one of the longest bridges in the world over water and the longest bridge on the interstate highway system. It opened in 1979. Its piles were driven 250 feet beneath the swamp, and it cost about $7 million per mile to build. It's a beautiful bridge, but there's some legends connected to it. First of all, we've done an episode on the legend of the Rougarou, and supposedly the infamous Cajun Rougarou, which is a werewolf-like creature, has been seen here in the swamp and around the bridge. And then there's Julia Brown. Julia Brown was a voodoo queen. She was sometimes called Julie White or Julia Black, and she was this voodoo priestess who lived at the edge of the swamp and worked with the residents there, trying to help them whenever they were ill. She would do charms for them, or sometimes she would lay down some curses. She would sing eerie songs with her guitar on her porch as well. One of the most memorable ones went, "One day I'm going to die and take the whole town with me." Yeah, I think if I heard her singing that on her front porch, I might be a little bit worried. Back when Brown was alive, this was at the turn of the 20th century, the towns of Ruddock, Frenier, and Napton were really prosperous, and they all laid at the edge of Lake Pontchartrain. And one of the reasons they were so prosperous is because they had these old cypress trees, which were great for logging, And farming cabbage was really successful here because it had this thick black soil. There was railroads that came through the towns, and so it was easy to get freight in and out. And it would bring groceries from New Orleans and haul away the logs and cabbages as far as Chicago. There were no roads, no doctors, and no electricity here, but they were really nice, self-reliant communities. On September 29, 1915, a massive hurricane swept in from the Caribbean. In Frenier, where Julia lived, the storm surge rose 13 feet, and the winds were at about 125 miles an hour. Many townsfolk sought refuge at the railroad depot, and it ended up collapsing and killed 25 of them. Altogether, about 300 people in Louisiana died. When the storm cleared on October 1st, Frenier, Reddock, and Napton had been entirely destroyed. All of the homes were flattened, and all the buildings were demolished. On top of that, miles of railway track had been washed away too. The hurricane seemed to come out of nowhere, but local guides will tell you something different. They'll say the storm that ripped through Manchac Swamp was the result of the wrath of Julia Brown. She laid a curse on the town because she felt she'd been taken for granted, and that curse came true when the hurricane came through. And it swept through on the day of her funeral and killed everyone that was in that area. There are some people who weren't sure that Julia Brown was a real thing. They just thought that this was some legend people had made up, but she indeed was real. A modern-day New Orleans voodoo priestess named Bloody Mary backs that up. And she told Mental Floss that she'd found references to a voodoo priestess or queen by the name of Brown who worked in New Orleans around the 1860s before moving out to Frenier. Brown served there like a local healer and midwife. And the song that Julia would sing is even told in oral history. The record claims that Aunt Julia Brown always sang on her front porch and played her guitar and sang songs that she would make up. The words to one of the songs she sang said that one day she would die and everything would die with her. There's a newspaper account from 1915 that describes Brown's funeral on the day of the storm. From October 2nd, 1915, it says many pranks were played by wind and tide. The Negroes had gathered for miles around to attend the funeral of Aunt Julia Brown, an old negress who was well known in that section and was a big property owner. The funeral was scheduled, and Aunt Julia had been placed in her casket, and the casket in turn had been placed in the customary wooden box and sealed. At 4 o'clock, however, the storm had become so violent that the people left the house in a stampede, abandoning the corpse. The corpse was found Thursday, and so was the wooden box, but the casket never has been found. Now, there are some that just say it was a coincidence and not really a curse from Julia Brown, that the hurricane happened to hit on the day of her funeral. Some people say that she's still out there in Manchac Swamp, and that you might see her walking along the shore here and there. And possibly you might hear her songs on the wind as well. And now a little break for a word about one of our sponsors. The Saco River in Maine. It's found in northeastern New Hampshire and southwestern Maine, and it's a favorite place for locals to kayak, canoe, and tube. The river supplies drinking water to 35 towns and eventually empties into the Atlantic Ocean. Saco is an Eastern Abenaki word meaning land where the river comes out. In more recent years, the Saco River has been subject to violence and police patrols were increased. There's another issue with the Saco River, and that is the Saco curse of Squandro. The Saco tribe lived in peace with the white man for 50 years. As the legend goes, around 1675, a group of drunken English sailors crossed paths with the chief of the Saco tribe, Squandro, and his family. The sailors didn't realize that they were messing with a chief who reputedly had powers of sorcery and magic. They saw Squandro's wife and their infant son, Menowee, and decided to test the European belief that a Native American baby can dog paddle upon birth, as do animals. The belief stemmed from the Native American dog paddle style, as opposed to the European breaststroke. The three sailors attacked the two Native Americans, throwing Squandro's infant son into the Saco River in front of the child's mother. The infant sank and the mother dove in and retrieved him. However, the infant soon died due to the incident. Another version of the legend states that both the pregnant mother and child died. To enact revenge, the chief put a curse on the Saco River, and he said 3 white people would drown in it every year. Whether or not the body count is held up, the murder of the child actually happened and likely led to further bloodshed in the years following, particularly in the start of King Philip's War. Right here in Florida, we have the Blackwater River. It's part of a state park that carries its name, covering 600 acres in the Florida Panhandle. The Muskogee had named the river Okalesa, meaning water black. The water's more of a golden brown color, getting its color from tannins in the leaves and roots of the trees, but can get fairly dark in deeper areas. There literally are some places that I've kayaked where the water does look black and you can't see to the bottom. And while it seems kind of disgusting, it really is just the tannins that are leaching out of the trees. A pale woman with long black hair, smelling of rotting flesh, haunts the waters reputedly and will attempt to drag you to your death if you can't escape her clutches. There's also a woman wearing a long white gown covered with blood that is said to appear near the oldest white Atlantic cedar tree in the park. Legend says she was sacrificed there in a bloody ritual. Rumors now say that people who visit the spot experience chills and have the feeling of being suffocated as a result of all the sacrificial rituals that took place there. And as a final warning to you, if you do see this ghostly woman in white, don't look her in the eyes and run away. Otherwise, you could be next. So I guess just don't meet her eyes. Next, we have Hessian Lake in New York. This is located in Bear Mountain State Park. During the Revolutionary War, British Redcoats and German Hessian auxiliary soldiers engaged the American patriots in a fierce battle along this lake and river. The Americans held the ground behind a stockade wall, and a bunch of Hessians led the charge to capture the fort. They were repulsed again and again. The Hessians and Redcoats eventually overwhelmed the Patriots, but it was a great cost for them. 250 Hessians fell during the battle, and their bodies and, body parts were then cast into the lake. It was said it turned the water red with blood, and a lot of people started calling it Bloody Lake after that. Timothy Dwight went on to become the president of Yale College, and he revealed the horrors of the lake after visiting the battlefield. He wrote, "We found at a small distance from Fort Montgomery a pond of moderate size in which we saw the bodies of several men who'd been killed in the assault upon the fort. They were thrown into this pond the preceding autumn by the British when probably the water was sufficiently deep enough to cover them. Some were covered at this time, but at a depth so small as to leave them distinctly visible. Others had an arm, a leg, a part of the body above the surface. Their faces were bloated and monstrous, and their postures were uncouth and distorted." Years later, people now know this as Hessian Lake, but the creepiness seems to still be there. There's a ghost hunter named Alexandria Holzer, and she told the local paper in 2016, "There are a lot of lost souls in that area. Many folks have claimed to see uniformed Hessian spirits roaming the lake shoreline at night. And there's one person who claimed to have seen a ghost that was missing limbs and had glowing eyes." Our next location is Changi Beach in Singapore, and this has a horrible story connected to it and a good reason to be haunted. Apparently, during World War II, in 1942, Japan was occupying Singapore, and they took tens of thousands of Chinese men who were suspected of having anti-Japanese sentiments and forced them into the waters of Changi Beach, and then they machine-gunned all of them. It is said that the ghosts of these men who were killed are trapped on the shores, and people claim to hear their disembodied crying and screaming as they suffer this deadly fate over and over again. So it's possible that this is just residual, but definitely horrifying. We have two locations in Oregon. The first is Manzanita Beach. In the 16th century, there were Spanish sailors who came along these shores. Some of them who were shipwrecked got the gold off of their ship and hiked up nearby Neocani Mountain, and they buried it in a particular way. They killed one of the African slaves that was with them, and they thought that this would serve as a warning. There are those who say that more than one person was killed by the sailors and that their ghosts haunt the trail there. Adding to the mystery is a pile of stones that show up on the beach every morning, and no one knows who's built this. And then Cannon Beach is in the northwest corner of Oregon. This is an idyllic coastal town. Has stunning coastline views, beautiful beaches, and some ghost stories, apparently. The Argonauta Inn Beach House is said to be haunted by the spectral presence of Genghis Hansel. No one seems to know anything about him, except that he was a guest at this hotel, and then all of a sudden he disappeared without a trace during a storm that erupted in 1952. People who stay at the hotel claim to have feelings of foreboding, as if someone is watching them, and they definitely feel like there is a male presence. Nobody has actually seen Hansel's apparition. They just assume it's him. But there's someone else here as well, who is not Hansel apparently, and he's been nicknamed the Bandage Man. He's been scaring teenagers out here in secluded makeout spots along the beach for many, many years. Apparently, when the Bandage Man shows up, he kills the mood because they'll see him in the rearview mirror of the car, wrapped in bandages, and he smells like rotting flesh. People say he was the victim of some kind of a sawmill accident. And what the Bandage Man does is not only shows up in the rearview mirror, but he likes to pound on the car, shake the car, and he'll come right up against the windows, getting these young couples who thought they were just here for a good makeout session to scream in terror. He will disappear once he scares them, and the young couples will escape back down to town. Once they get out of their car, as is the case with so many of these urban legends, of course they discover his bloody fingerprints on the vehicle's doors and windows. Next up, we have Haunted Lake in New Hampshire. This is technically known as Scobie Pond, but it became known by the name Haunted Lake because there are people who believe that the ghost of a settler was killed nearby. He was sitting at a campfire with some of his traveling companions, and they took him out. Not sure if it was a fight or what was going on, and now his specter is said to haunt this pond. His full-bodied apparition is seen, and he likes to just appear and then disappear, scaring people to death. Not literally, but scaring them pretty good. The Cow Hampshire History blog suggests that this is called Haunted Lake because a terrible fire once burned the shores of the lake, killing every living thing and leaving it looking charred and spooky. And then there was an early surveyor who wrote in 1753 that he heard mysterious, unrelenting groanings and shrieks as of a human being in distress. And so he assumed he was hearing a ghost. So maybe Haunted Lake really is haunted. There's a place in the Atlantic Ocean known as the Sargasso Sea. Never have heard of this before. It's the only sea without a land boundary. Its borders are defined entirely by ocean currents. Now, if that isn't odd, I don't know what is. It's 1,000 miles wide and 3,000 miles long, and it's named for the sargassum seaweed that floats on its surface. It has a very diverse sea life. Live Science reports, the eerie calmness contributes to the area's mystery, as several ships have been found drifting crewless through its peaceful waters. In 1840, the French merchant ship Rosalie sailed through the Sargasso Sea and was later discovered with its sails set, but without any crew members on board. In an effort to explain the mysterious disappearances, 19th century lore told of the Sargasso Sea's carnivorous seaweed, which was believed to devour sailors whole, leaving only the ship. Gardner Lake in Connecticut. Local lore has it that faint piano music comes from the bottom of this lake, which is near Salem, Connecticut. I guess part of the problem is there was a household that was moving in the 1890s, and we had a bit of trouble here. Somehow some of their belongings ended up in the lake. People who go scuba diving in the lake report seeing parts of the house and the furniture still under the water intact, including a piano. So people wonder, are there spectral hands who are hosting piano concertos under the water here? Lake Superior has a haunting related to a ship I'm sure you've all heard of, the SS Edmund Fitzgerald. This was an American Great Lakes freighter, and it sank on Lake Superior during a storm that erupted on November 10th, 1975. There were 29 men on board, and all were lost. She was the largest ship on North America's Great Lakes when she initially launched in 1958. A few days after she sank, a U.S. Navy aircraft was using some kind of magnetic detection device, and they picked up a couple of anomalies that told them that the ship was in two large pieces. No distress signals were ever sent, but there was a message sent out to another ship, the SS Arthur M. Anderson, and the Fitzgerald reported, "I have a bad list, lost both radars, and am taking heavy seas over the deck. One of the worst seas I've ever been in." The captain's last message to that same ship was, "We are holding our own." So I don't know why he didn't send out a distress signal. Maybe he thought they'd be okay. Clearly, something seems to have broken that ship into two. Gordon Lightfoot made it the subject of his 1976 hit song, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. And because of that sinking, there were some changes on the Great Lakes shipping regulations to make sure that this would never happen again. Needless to say, the Edmund Fitzgerald is sometimes still seen sailing across Lake Superior. As a matter of fact, in 1985, the crew of a commercial ship swear that they saw the SS Edmund Fitzgerald. When CNN put that report out, they said, well, there's probably a perfectly reasonable explanation. There's some mist and a lighthouse, and they probably just mistook it for a ship. But there are other people who claim to have seen the SS Edmund Fitzgerald sailing across the lake as a ghost ship whenever there's choppy and icy waters. There's some other haunted Michigan waters. The ghost ship Western Reserve has been spotted in the waters off Deer Park, Michigan. This schooner went down in April of 1892 and was owned by Peter Minch. He had been aboard with his family the day the ship went down. Only the wheelman survived the wreck, and the ship continues to be seen to this day. There was a man known as Captain Trudell. He did not know Peter Minch, but something odd happened here. He dreamed the exact details of the accident before it happened, and he was the one to find the body of Peter Minch, and he immediately recognized it because he had seen it in that dream. The W.H. Gilcher has been sighted in the Straits of Mackinac, where it went down in 1892. The coal steamer is said to appear in the fog off Mackinac Island, but it's not the only ship that appears near here. The other is an older vessel that returns every 7 years and is the phantom craft of the explorer Sebastian, who's still trying to return home to his fiancée in France. The ghost schooner Erie Board of Trade has also been spotted in Saginaw Bay. The cursed ship disappeared in Lake Huron in 1883, and according to the stories, was wrecked by a ghost. The captain of the ship had ordered a crewman to go up the main mast to the boatswain's chair, even though the man knew that it was not safe. This crewman ended up falling to his death. Soon after, his ghost started to appear on the deck and in the cabins. The crew told the story while they were in port, and on its next voyage, the ship vanished and was never seen again. So did he get his revenge on the captain? Possibly. And one of the strangest and most macabre stories is the tale of Grandpa. The Great Lakes, of course, as we all know, are very cold and very deep, and those frigid waters will preserve almost anything. This includes human remains. And the story goes that there's a preserved body in the engine room of the wreck of the SS Kamloops, which went down in 1927. Locals and divers call him Grandpa, and he's known to float quietly behind divers, following them as they swim around the compartments. Now, maybe it's just some weird currents making divers think they're being followed by a ghost, but whatever the effect is, it has scared the daylights out of many a diver. So are any of these quote-unquote deadly waters, creepy waters, actually haunted? That is for you to decide. Thanks for joining me on this bonus cast, and thank you for your support. I've been your host, Diane. You take care now. Bye-bye.